Hi, my name is Dylan, this is Ply Creations and welcome to my workshop. Today these two get some well-deserved TLC. All hand planes, irrespective of what they are made of, be it wood, as is my jointer, built this a few months ago, or my 5.5 Stanley, requires occasional maintenance. And in the case of these two today, is I'd like to flatten the soles. Not particularly hard to do, especially considering that contrary to what many may believe or profess, it doesn't necessarily need to be absolutely perfect. As a start, it's important to remember that when the plane is flat, that the nose of the plane should be coplanar and level with the front of the mouth with the rear of the mouth, and the rear of the mouth to the heel of the hand plane, ensuring that it is flat along its length. And that is to provide us with accuracy and flatness when we plane the wood. Here we are at the workbench. I've got the jointer mounted upside down on the bench, balancing on my face vise. So I'll be checking it using one of the straighter edges that I have in my workshop, together with a feeler gauge. This particular feeler gauge is 0.0015 inches or 0.04 millimeters. Often you will see people putting a straight edge on a surface and checking for light shining through under it. Don't quote me, I may be wrong on this one, but I think you can see a gap as little as 1/1000th of an inch, or 0.02 millimeters. The sole of your hand plane does not need to be that accurate. It doesn't need to be that flat. So you're not aiming for not seeing any light. So that's where I prefer to use a feeler gauge, because that gives me a better idea than having to guess what the spaces I'm looking at and going that way. So important to check across the full width of the hand plane. Not so much the case in metal hand planes, but wooden hand planes can develop a twist. This one you'll see, or the straight edge you'll see, is not long enough. So I'm coming from two sides, checking my heel to the back and the front of the mouth, and then from the tip or the nose. So coming from one edge, and you can see that there's a gap there, and then at the back of the mouth it tightens up. So I've got a bit of a gap there, then the middle, and I'm seeing something similar, and the far edge not so much. And we'll probably see this as it removes the pencil marks when we use it on sanding paper. Coming from the front, you'll see there's a gap as well, and across I think it will be slightly hollow as well. And then mount the metal vise. Really important that when you mount a metal vise metal plane, that when you mount a metal plane into a vise, is that you do not clamp the wings, that you focus on your clamping pressure in line with your sole. This is cast iron, they will snap, so do be careful when clamping this or any metal hand plane into a vise. Drop it in relatively deep and then check it. And I'm seeing something similar to what we saw on the wooden plane, and across. Now the sole of a metal hand plane can often become concave across its width as a result of the fact that it's constantly being used on pieces of wood that is narrower than the full width of the hand plane, and it wears the middle of the hand plane away, and you'll see that typically on old hand planes and the hand planes that have seen a lot of use, or that you are restoring. On the metal hand plane, you'll also notice that I've made some marks with a permanent marker, and this also, as with the pencil on the wooden hand plane, helps me keep track when I work on the sanding paper. Next step would be is to move my workbench out of the way and get my jointer around. I used my infeed table on my jointer as my reference surface, and I'll show you how I set that up. What's really important before we even get there is the reason why I'm making this video. I've been speaking to a lot of woodworkers who have attempted to flatten their plane soles, and without fail, everybody that I've spoken to struggles to do it. Turns out that they're not installing the plane, the iron, the chip brake and the cap iron as they would necessarily do in use. And it's really important that the plane is set up as you would be using it to plane a piece of wood. Do be sure that you retract the blade into the body of the plane so that when you do flatten it, you don't damage the cutting edge of your cutting iron. But it is important that you install the blade and have the plane as you would have it in use when planing a piece of wood. In the case of a wooden hand plane, it's not as important because there's not a lot of tension in the body of the plane, but install the blade, tap the wedge home and make sure everything is as it would be if you would be using the hand plane. So I've got the jointer, brought the jointer in. I'm using the infeed table of my jointer as my reference surface. Any flat surface will do. The top of a table saw will do. Your kitchen countertop will do if it's flat. Just make sure you flatten your hand planes when your other half isn't home. And then as far as abrasive goes, I've got a belt sander belt that I've cut and open it up. This one was at some point an 80 grit. And while we're on grits, you don't need to buff the bottom of your hand plane to a mirror shine, but that is up to you. I'm sticking the abrasive down using a double-sided tape. This stuff is quite mean. I get it from a local supplier. Very sticky and difficult to get off once it's on, but it really sticks quite well. Do be careful when you use a tape to stick it down that you do not push or pull your hand plane over the tape. It lifts your sanding paper slightly, and if you push or pull that part of the hand plane over, it tilts it up or down very slightly, but you struggle to get everything in flat and line. Remember, co-planar, the nose, front of the mouth, back of the mouth, and the heel of your hand plane. So try not to go over, and of course the thicker your double-sided tape is, the worse it actually gets. So I'm quickly going to stick everything together. Next time I'll see you, we'll go through the process starting with the jointer. So the sandpaper is attached and we're ready to start. A couple of things to be cognizant of is that the machine, any machine that you'll be working on or doing this on, needs to be unplugged to be sure that it doesn't inadvertently start and spoil your day. That's the first thing. The second thing is you'll notice that I've removed the blade guard just so that I don't have it in my way while I'm working. And then thirdly is, and this is also where sometimes people struggle, is you'll notice when I installed the belt, the sanding belt, is I placed a lot of tension on it as I attached it to the two ends where I got the tape. And the reason for that being is as you are pushing or pulling on the hand plane to get it flat, and you'll see that we both use a pushing and a pulling action, is so that the sandpaper doesn't roll up under the leading edge as you push it across. And what that will do is that will roll in under your leading edge and roll that section around. And I find that can actually get you chasing your tail and getting your hand plane flat. So put tension on it, as much tension as you possibly can, and that will keep your sandpaper flat while you either push or pull the hand plane in the process. So I'm going to go over to the jointer, take the jointer and start working on its sole. Now what I do is it's really important that you don't put any more pressure on the hand plane than you would in use. It is possible to flex a hand plane in use. So if you crunch up your shoulders and you push really hard on your tote and your handle, it is possible to flex the metal body of a hand plane. So it's really important that when you put it down, that you would use it in a manner as would be similar to using the hand plane. What I do sometimes do is I also do tend to spread my hands around the hand plane. So I'll cross over the section in front and put my hand around the back, around the tote, and what that allows me to do is also even out the pressure while I'm busy with the process. So also you want to flatten the material, or you want to flatten the sole evenly while you're doing that. So you want to remove material evenly. So often what I'll do is I'll also turn the hand plane around and do a few strokes from the other side. So typically, as do a few strokes, you can count them. Do 10 strokes one way, turn it around and 10 strokes the other way. But do try and equalize the pressure over the body of the hand plane so that you remove material evenly. And you don't need a lot of down pressure onto the bottom, or onto the plane in the process, because then you tend to flex the body of the hand plane in the process. So we'll start with the jointer. That's it, done with the jointer. Really not sure if you'll be able to see this, but I've removed all the pencil marks along its full length and width, and we'll check it once we're done with the jointer. Sorry, this is the jointer, so we'll check it as soon as I'm done with the 5.5. So both in the case of the 5.5 and the jointer, the marks that I made at the bottom of the soles have been removed. So I'll show you another way that I use to check for flatness using my reference surface and the feeler gauge. Just a quick tip is, one, if you happen to be flattening both a metal and a wooden hand plane at the same time, do the wooden hand plane first on your abrasive before doing the metal hand plane, because otherwise you risk the metal shapes going into the sole of your wooden hand plane, and that's not necessarily ideal. So do the wooden hand plane first and then the metal hand plane. Then also maintain the hand planes on as you go along. So in the case of the metal hand plane, I like to put a coat of oil using a rag and a can a la Paul Sellers. So what I do is I just add a thin layer of oil to the bottom of my hand plane, and I do this with all my hand planes, both on the sole and on the wings, after use. So because we do struggle with rust where I live. So that is then treated in the next one is on the wooden hand plane. You can leave it as is, or sometimes I like to add a layer of boiled linseed oil to the bottom of the hand plane. So do make sure that you do treat the newly exposed surfaces on your hand planes. So I'm going to go over and remove the abrasive from my jointer, clean up a little bit, and then come back and show you how I check for flatness. So with both hand planes flat, or at least with the markings on the sole removed, next step is to check that they are indeed flat, or sufficiently so. I put the hand plane on the surface, and this is my preferred way to check it, and then I use a feeler gauge again, and I like to use the thickness of 0.1 millimeters. In that case it's 0.004 inches, and I find that if this doesn't go in under the hand plane, that the hand plane is sufficiently flat to give me accurate results on wood. So just put it on the flat surface, and on the other camera you'll see I'm unable to push the feeler gauge in on the different positions I'm checking under the hand plane. I prefer this method, however it does have the disadvantage that I cannot check if the hand plane is hollow across its width, and all I do there is I will then put a straight edge, a combination square, the blade, I put that across the hand plane, and then I try and put the feeler gauge in under that, and that gives me an idea of exactly across its width how flat my hand planes are. I have already checked that, so happy with this one. Moving over to the jointer, place the jointer on the surface, and then try to push again the gauge under, which I'm not, apart from, I hope I've got it aligned properly, in the back corner. And that's because when I plane I do tend to overcompensate to one side, and I've removed a little bit more material from that one corner. I don't think that will affect the operation of the hand plane, and if I do find that it does, I'll go back and re-flatten it, but with both of these hand planes I'm happy where I am. And that brings us to the end of this particular edition of Ply Creations. As a little bit of background, just tell you more about these tools that I've been working on. This is a 5.5 Stanley. I've been looking for a 5.5 for a long time. It's a sweet, so I've got it from a local collector. I've done the blade and chip brake and set that up, and the sole needed to be flattened before I can put it into general use in the workshop. So that's done. And then this one is a wooden jointer that I built a couple of months ago. Wooden hand planes need to bed in, and this one is now settled to some extent, but it needed to be flat because its next job is to flatten my workbench top. So that will be the subject of a follow-up video at some point. So thank you for joining me. In the comments, leave comments in regards to how you flatten your own hand planes. If you use hand tools, enjoy it. If you don't, you're missing out. But head over to our website, supplycreations.com. I'll put the link on the screen. Have a look at the website. Go and check out our blog and our plan sets that we have for sale. And be safe in the workshop, and we hope to see you again around you soon. Hope you have a good one, and cheers.